does one get the middle name or moniker Cougar? Because to my knowledge, you're not like a cougar like John Cougar Mellencamp. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. I'm assuming it's based on movement, but I'd like to know, how do you get that and who do you get that from?
So it's really like not even as cool as all that.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Sparza, coming to you with another great installment of the Grappling Hour. I hope you're having a good day. I'm having a pretty good day. Had a good lunch, about to do a good interview. I think it's going to be good. If you're watching this channel and you don't think they're good, what are you doing here? Anyway, long story short, very happy to have our guest on today. It is my first time talking with him. We'll get to him in a second, but first, some house cleaning. If you could do me a solid, say you like this show, and I, again, hope you do. It would be so great if you became a member of the Grappling Hour community. The way it works is you go on, you do $5 a month, and you get to see these interviews 30 days before anybody else. I know, doesn't sound like a lot, but sometimes we talk about things that are about to happen, and people don't know about them until after the 30 days. And then guess what? You're the last person to know. So if you want to be in the know, go ahead, give us some love. And if you really want to show some support and love to the show, you can pay a few extra dollars more for our premium membership, where we do extra episodes that are available only for that tier. So we do technique breakdowns. We do extra episodes with our guests where we'll ask them about certain topics, whether it's steroids, I know, weird, right? Competition advice, and even occasionally some hot button issues. But you can also see segments where people kind of roast my competition footage, because I got to tell you, it is pretty funny to roast. I think it's only fair. All right. Our guest today. This gentleman is very, very violent. Now, I talked to him off air, and he seems like a perfectly normal guy. But the manner in which his jiu-jitsu really dictated itself at the most recent Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, it concerns me. But it also shows how effective a few choice palm strikes can be. And my man, they like to say the old adage, you wake up, you choose violence. Our guest today woke up that day and chose violence, and it was incredibly captivating. And we've seen him at Submission Underground. We have seen him compete in combat formats before, but I was very impressed by his performance at the most recent Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds that I said, you know what, I want to get to know this man. So today, for the very first time, we are bringing onto the show, and I hope you guys will help me welcome Zack Schneider. Zack, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for that intro. I really appreciate it. And really, I feel like the last couple of combat jiu-jitsus, I haven't had the chance to strike that much. So it was nice to be on the other side of at least a few strikes this time.
Well, you made use of it. Was that something that you were then building into the game plan as you were starting to come into your own? Because it looked like you had kind of prepared, like you had maybe a montage sequence that you went back and you were able to work on to get ready for this one.
Yeah, I think I'm just getting more comfortable in the rule set and like knowing the positions that it's available to me, and where they're available to my opponents, and understanding what I need to respect and what I maybe can push through. So I think a lot of it's experience in the rule set. My gym is an MMA gym, and honestly, we weren't really bashing each other a lot, full force getting ready for this, but we were showing each other a lot of strikes, and that was just helping me get comfortable knowing where they were, and then just kind of had to let them loose on the day of,
I have to say, I do appreciate that, because I have been on the helping side of some friends who have done combat jiu-jitsu, some voluntarily where they have struck me, and some involuntarily where I said, oh, we're doing this now, huh? So I know what it's like to be in that realm from that side, because I like to tell people this, which is when one of your teammates takes one of these matches, they have volunteered your gym to also be preparing for that. So
Yeah.
it is nice that you have those training partners who, instead of creating harm, more so creating strategy and approaches that you can use in the moment.
Well, and like I said, it's primarily an MMA gym, so most of my training partners are professional fighters. So to them, like doing some jujitsu with palm strikes is a significant step down from sparring, which is like a pretty normal, weekly thing depending on the guy. So I feel like doing combat jujitsu, I'm still kind of like the wimpiest guy in the room because I have like the most restrictive rule set. So yeah, it's nice. Whereas a pure jiu-jitsu gym, nobody wants to get hit there, and you're the one weirdo who's deciding to get hit in a sport where you don't have to.
Yes, especially I'm sure to MMA guys, it's kind of like diet jiu-jitsu or diet MMA. Like it's not quite there. And honestly, my reservation with combat jiu-jitsu in the very early stages was the fact that I saw it kind of exposing how not great we were at striking. And I think that there have been certain inroads where, in my experience, I have seen certain athletes really come into their own in a certain tournament. And you can almost pinpoint the moment when they kind of look at their hands like, I can use these now. And you just see them for the first time wailing on people. With you, I think maybe that nice character building with you and your team definitely came into fruition for this. So how did you become involved? Like, how did you get the call for this particular combat jiu-jitsu experience?
Well, I got into this one because of I had been in two previous combat jujitsus, one at 145 and one at 135. The way I originally got in was basically by getting super lucky. I really didn't do. I hadn't done a whole lot to have deserved the spot. I'd won some local tournaments. I had earned a black belt under Robert Drysdale over in Vegas right before I moved back home to Spokane. And I was here and I was helping my coach now, Pablo Alfonso, who is the owner of Warrior Camp. He competed in Submission Underground, also how I got in there. He had competed in combat jiu-jitsu a few times, done well, especially in jiu-jitsu OT. He had a good performance. He's an MMA OG. He beat Miguel Torres way back in the day. So Pablo's a great training partner and a great guy to like point things out. He was a little injured, a little beat up. He had to pull out, and I had been helping him prepare. We were about the same size, and he's like, hey, I have to pull out, but you should put my guy in, basically put in a good word. And I'm messaging Eddie, who doesn't follow me back, and I'm just like, I'm in shape, I'm ready to go, let me in, And I think because it was kind of late notice and they needed somebody, they're like, all right, you're in. And that was basically how I got my first shot. I ended up winning a match and then losing a match to Elias on that one, and then went 145, beat Diego Lopez, and then lost to Jordan Hawley. And Eddie kind of like, once guys are committed and they're in there competing in the rule set and they're showing they're all in committed, he'll have you back, So I kind of just gotten in and then did my best to not fumble it.
Yeah, I the hardest part is getting that call the first time. And sometimes the more aggressive you pursue it, the more it doesn't come. But then you get this opportunity where somebody has to fall out, and then you say, all right, I'm all set. So it is very difficult to know when those moments come. But as you mentioned, you were already having some good success with it, but it's always one of those things where you want more, you want that next shot, and it's not guaranteed. You never know what they're looking for and what may be in the cards. But they obviously liked you enough to bring you back for this latest incarnation. So what was the preparation like for this particular juncture? Because you mentioned that, you work with an MMA team. How far out do you consider, if there is any kind of camp or prep for this specific tournament?
Yeah, so this one is a big one for me, not just because of the stage, which is UFC Fight Pass is a pretty big stage, and getting to go compete in front of Eddie Bravo, and it's a trip to Mexico, and all these, strikes are involved. There's a lot of things that make it seem like a big tournament, and it did feel like one. In addition to that, I had a match with Giant Slayer, as a lot of people know him, Esteban Martinez. I had that match 2 weeks before this, and that was at 140 pounds. But I think when the previous Combat Jiu-Jitsu came out, I can't remember which one it was, maybe welterweights, maybe the one after that. But they announced Combat 135 was coming back. I immediately messaged Eddie like, hey, do I still got my spot? And he's like, yeah, dude, you're in. And so right then I'm like, okay, I have to start preparing cardio-wise, but I also have to start preparing my weight. I get on the scale, I'm like 158 pounds, but I have like 10 or 12 weeks, I believe. My full-time gig is I'm a elementary and middle school PE teacher, and I coach track and I coach some wrestling, and but yeah, I'm a teacher. I run around with little kids. That's my gig. So I was trying to weight cut while also trying to manage kids, which isn't like a tough combo. I was not my nicest, most perfect version of myself. But started the weight cut, started training, like I'm in a camp. But then I did have 6 weeks out of school where I'm just watching my own two little girls during the day while my wife works, and then I can go to the gym and commit to, being there for several hours and really treating myself like a professional. I hired Dylan Lemery, who's he's actually a physical therapist, but he's started working with professional athletes in the Spokane area, and he was a lot of help both for sport-specific strength and conditioning, and also he's working with a lot of UFC fighters and can get some data from the UFC PI and compare like numbers that we're getting back and training programs. So I feel like I was able to treat it like I'm a professional this time around, and I think that really, paid off.
I'd like to know, because this will never happen for me. Like I'm not gonna ever get data on my athleticness. That's not happening for me. What was, if any, one of the more surprising things that you were able to find from this data? Because I do actually love numbers. I geek out on sleep data. I geek out on stats. I am a tape study guy. So every form of data that I can get, I like to have my hands on. What was surprising to you, if anything, from this like really, really impressive sort of lab that can come back with information for you as an athlete?
Yeah, well, and not only we had access to the UFC PI, but he's also working with Brady Heilstad, who's the Ultimate Fighter finalist. He's been doing well in the UFC. Trained with him a few times. Juliana Miller, another person UFC fighter around that way. And then he has a wrestler who is around our size. We have a few more pro fighters from my gym around that size. So we have like guys around my weight near me to compare to as well. So from what he was able to see, I scored well on what does he call it? It's like the force velocity curve. So my ability to generate force with like 25, 50, 75% of my body weight doing like various movements, whether that's a push or a jump or a squat or a press or something like that. Like measures the velocity of how fast you can move the bar. So that would like relate to explosion. And what I'm trying to improve on is my alactic monocreatine system, which is like sub 8-second explosions and ability to do those like at a maximum way. On an Aerodyne bike, what's the most watts you can put out, and then try to hit that number over and over and over again, repeating without dropping that off. That was he called it a chink in my armor that we've been addressing at the end of every workout, and I think that really transfers to those scrambles that, especially in no-gi, especially in lightweight divisions, like you just need to be able to do. So I can't not have a bunch of 8-second scrambles. I have to have that in a tournament setting,
That is so fascinating. Like legitimately, even you giving me this this kind of overlap of what it was, or this overview. You know, when I work with my guys, I try to, without any form of real data like that, it's like the other day I was working with one of my guys, and I literally just told him, I'm like, hey man, you do know that at about 2 minutes left in a 6-minute round, you slow down? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, you're really good, you're go, 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 but every minute at 2 minutes, for whatever reason, I get out, or I am able to pass your guard, or I do this. And I go, you have a certain slowdown period. And he's like, well, how do we fix it? I go, well, we have to do full 6-minute rounds, so that way you get the full feel of it. But at minute 2, we have to have specific strategies so that you don't lose position trying to hunt for a submission at an inopportune time. So if you're going for stuff, we need to have a more secure system on how we're doing it. And he's like, oh, and I go, yeah. And he looked at me and he goes, how many times have you seen it? And I go, well, I've notched it down here on a piece of paper. It has happened 11 out of 11 times. And he goes, oh shit. And I was like, yeah, dude. So you better believe if I had access to those numbers and those things, it would blow my mind, because I'm sure for what you're mentioning, it changes the way that you have to practice. The conditional sorts of, routines or things that you have to do within your training can be dialed down that much more. And that makes a huge difference.
Well, it's just like, what am I going to pour my energy into? And like, am I going to have a reasoning behind what I'm going to pour my energy into? Or am I just training jiu-jitsu real hard and hoping that works out? And it probably will, unless someone takes you to a spot you're not as comfortable with, you know? And I think it kind of makes sense for my game. I have good scrambles, but from considering my weight division, I'm more of like a takeaway movement guy, you know, like a get a good squeeze, whether it's from like a closed guard or a rubber guard or from like a side control. I like to take away the space and then like kind of try to pummel through there. And just knowing that that's something that also plays to my strengths, that like helps inform how I grapple, and then it helps inform, okay, well, this is my weakness. So in training, let's force yourself to scramble and be uncomfortable in spots where maybe you don't even have to. And then the Aerodyne bike, I think, is a great way that's like very low risk to just blow out, do it as many times as you want at the end of the workout, and then, you know, go drink some water, and you're not going to injure yourself. You're just going to get exactly what your lungs and muscles are kind of needing.
Well, that's what you tell yourself. What I try to tell my guy who does my strength and conditioning is literally like, oh, I'm going to injure myself. He's like, on the bike? And I'm like, yep, pretty sure. Don't know how. I'm going to fall or something. But man, I mean, again, dialing that stuff in, that is so cool and so unique, and great of you to make that investment in it. How did that come up? Like, was that something that you actively sought, or did you have a connection at a certain point and you said, yeah, this is something I'd like to pursue? Because I know you mentioned it in conjunction with previous combat jiu-jitsu experiences where you kind of say like, hey, I do want to advance. I do want to get better. But is that something that happens, or something that just kind of like falls into your lap? Because if it fell into my lap, I would be the happiest.
Yeah, well, I'd say a little bit of both. It was really easy to reach out, even though he's a super busy guy and he has a lot of clients, and he was a little hesitant to take on a new client. I think he was, pretty heavy, but heavy schedule, you know. But he works with several guys from Warrior Camp, like the professional fighters, and I've seen great results from them. I've seen like they look better, they feel pretty strong in rounds and everything, and he's doing everything really intelligently and creating whole programs for people, and also was able to be a go-to of just, you know, questions. He had access to information whenever I didn't know which way to go on a certain portion of preparation. So because he already worked with so many guys in my gym, he would already come by the gym and into like our weight room on the side of the mat room, and we would do things there once a week, and I would just go a couple more times, do my workouts there. So I just had to convince him that I was worth taking on, and then luckily I had some good performances, made him feel smart for having me. But yeah, he made it really easy, and that's been a big change. I've had a personal trainer for one of the last ones, but we did. I definitely felt stronger there, but I don't know if as good of sport specific type training. So and also this one going straight out of my home gym made it very easy for me to do.
That makes sense. And I did see you kind of give a shout out to your team when you were like able to take a moment and process everything, because I think that you felt good about your performance, and that always has to be kind of cool to be able to share that. And just to kind of give people the perspective that maybe sometimes they don't consider for these things, and you touched on it, which is, yeah, you can go hard a lot, but at a certain point that's bad for the body. Like, you can't do that every day. It's sort of like these MMA people who say, even Donald Cerrone going like, yeah, man, I don't spar hard anymore. And you go, really? You don't? And you think about it, you go, I want to be here. I want to be in the room and doing this. And yet, if you're trying to compete at the highest level, you're all black belts, or a majority of you who are competing in this tournament are black belts. So it's really just margin thin sort of things that separate winning and losing in that kind of region. So if your all techniques are very good, yeah, take the time to dial in on those things that make the difference.
Yeah, for sure. And jiu-jitsu, I feel, Donald Cerrone talks about not sparring every day. I think part of that is shots to the head, and in jiu-jitsu, we're lucky enough to not get that cumulative damage. You might bunk your head on a takedown or knock heads together or something. But it's definitely still hard on the body, Yeah, I'm getting to be not the youngest guy in the gym now, I'm still young in comparison to some, but the guy who beat me in the finals was 17. So I'm like, gee, not quite that young. I am starting to feel a little bit of the, got some bunks. You might see me stretching my neck here today, still from a little bit of that combat jiu-jitsu, but
I do appreciate that you are trying to explain old to a clearly older person than you. So as you're just like, oh man, this getting old sucks, I'm like, I've seen what you can do, sir.
Right. I'm just saying I'm starting to feel it. I'm starting to, I felt like I was the young guy in the gym for forever, and then one day someone asked me when I graduated, and it was like 10 years before they did, and I was like, oh no, what's happening,
The ones that hurt the most are if any of the kids see you in charge of the music, and they're like, "Oh, I love these oldies," and you go, "No, no. Oh man," you just get the whole Saving Private Ryan like meme right in front of them, and you go, "All right,
1,000-yard stare." Yeah,
I just tell people all the time, I'm like, I think the nice part about us is we all want to be on the mats for as long as we can. And I think that taking those precautions help to give you the information that help you to make better decisions to do that. So it is very cool to see you taking those precautions and those sort of approaches. What I would ask though is, I would like you to kind of walk me through what it's like to not only travel, but week of what does your life look like? Because it seemed like you mentioned that for 6 out of the 10 weeks for your camp, that you were doing the strength and conditioning. So that means there was a 10-week camp, but the week of is when things start to go into motion. What is that week like for you, sir?
That week for me was very similar to all the previous weeks. The workload went down, and I started to focus on just getting the weight down and getting my body feeling really good. I've been really lucky for my whole life, but certainly my jiu-jitsu career, to avoid injuries. I've never had anything major happen, but you just are like, don't let something happen that last week. So the last week, I'm probably if I'm like really hydrated, I'm drinking a gallon of water a day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I drink 2 gallons each day. Saturday, I go pretty much I'll just sip a tiny bit of water, as little as I can. And that was my travel day, Saturday. And then weigh in and compete on Sunday. Also, at the same time, I start drinking 2 gallons on Thursday. I cut out like my carbs and my salt just to start to get that water to fall off of me. And that actually worked out really well. The cut was really easy. this time. Training, I'm going in the evening. I'll do like a light strength and conditioning. I think 2 of those days, like a Monday, Wednesday, and that's really low load, just like keeping explosion. Another thing that we talked about is that like pop, that explosive ability, is one of the very quickest things to drop off when you're not training it. Other things like strength and like long-term cardio will hold on longer, but that explosive ability after just a couple of days will start to drop. So you don't necessarily want to do none of it that last week. So feeling explosive, feeling good. When I train, I'm mostly training with guys I trust, and we're doing some like some positional stuff that I want to think about and want to spend some extra time working on. Some just open rounds. We're showing each other a lot of strikes, but just like super light to the head, and you know, playing with everything else. But seeing them, getting comfortable with them, respecting that if someone throws a heel straight down the middle, you're like, oh, that would have blasted me. You know, just getting in that headspace. This was the first time actually though that I took my wife with me to this one. So we dropped off our 2 little girls. We have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Grandparents got the girls. Wife came with me on the plane. And I just tried not to be a jerk while I'm feeling like dehydrated and hungry and all that, and just tried to be a decent person in the airport and then get there. And I landed. I was really worried about weight, right? I landed like 138.3. It was like perfect. Slept in sweats, woke up a half a pound off of weight. We just took a walk. Again, we're in Mexico in July. So I threw on some sweats, walked to the grocery store, got some stuff to like rehydrate and refuel for afterward, walked back. I was perfectly on weight, waited a half hour, weighed in, and then just like started to recover after that.
Nice. All right. So here's where I want to kind of get into the actual matches themselves, because here's where I'm at home. I'm cleaning up around the house, and I have it on in the background. And there have been some good moments. Now, full disclosure, Dovadog is a friend of the show. So whenever you have a friend of the show and they're competing against somebody that I don't know personally, it's all right, Dova, let's see how this goes. And Dova's in trouble very quickly, which then prompts me to be like, oh, you have this beautiful choke that you're working from very quickly in the match. This is like within seconds of the start of this match.
This is the first time I touched him.
Exactly. But it's within seconds. So it's literally me cleaning something in the house, doing this, and being like, all right, well. And you know that something's happening when I like put down my stuff, where I go, all right. So I waltz on over from like doing dishes to sit down and watch it from my couch. And I'm legit concerned, but I'm in 2 places here. I'm admiring your work while also looking at my friend and saying like, damn, dude, he should be put away. Like 4 of these things are game killing moments. And I'm like, okay, this is a really freaking good match. And so I'm looking at you and I'm like, everything that you're doing in that match is precise. It's very, very technical. And it was just such a fun match. And I just put up that little status update, but I meant every second of it, which was, holy shit, look at how good this is. Like, go watch that match just as an introduction if they don't know your work, because you were putting together good jiu-jitsu, but even the way that you were breaking up some of the strikes, even when you had the back, I was like, yeah, no, that's a really solid incorporation of what combat jiu-jitsu was. So I thought that you guys had a wonderful like match altogether. And I recognized at least 4 times, I think I tapped from my couch. So I was very impressed. But tell me what you were thinking throughout that match.
Yeah, thank you on all of that. Now, I think that handgun choke that I caught immediately, it was the very first time I touched him. I think if I would have expected at all to have that clean of a look, and if I would have committed, I think I could have ended it immediately. Now, Cordova's obviously watch the match. He's really tough to sub. He is grimy, gritty. He's gonna fight like tooth and nail for everything. And hats off to him for finding my hip, finding some space, and then I threw it on a few times later, and he had a really good reaction for it right away and snuffed it out before it could get that deep. But yeah, the very first time I touched him, I grabbed the back of his head and I'm just connecting my hand to my wrist and kind of throwing his head underneath. Um, it's a choke that can come on. It can just like get slapped on real quick, like it did. Like I just got a decent collar tie right off, and it went straight into it. Um, he got out. I was kind of trying to sit down for it, and he was able to get enough pressure and slip his head out. I try to come front headlock. He tries to slip away. This one is like out of all of my matches, I think this one was the most fun, and I was also the most tired after this match. Even though it was my very first match, I went in the back afterward and I posted a little picture on my Instagram story of me immediately after, like, oh no, my forearms are rocks. I'm like exhausted. I can barely stand. And that was match one of this big tournament. You know, I've got tougher and tougher guys ahead. Well, maybe not tougher. Cordova's as tough as anyone in that bracket, but that that was definitely a good match for me. Let's see what else. He got out of. I threw on an ankle lock just super quickly. I got a pop and he didn't tap, and I went, oh, he's not going to tap from that. And I just came up and, you know, tried to play top game. He had really good off balances. I did my best to just keep my foot under his leg. He was trying to slip underneath for some of his entries, keep top pressure. And yeah, I was able to get some of my strikes off. Looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have finished. At the end, I had an arm triangle that really I maybe should have got, and I used that to slip to the back where I had another full minute to finish in regulation. He had good reactions. He was defensive, and he didn't give it to me, and actually pushed me into probably just where he wanted me, which was EBIOT, which he's 10 planet black belt. He's been doing that forever. That's kind of a part of his game. That I think he was also expecting to catch me there. So I was pretty happy with my OT this tournament as well, between grabbing Cordova and also Siraj in OT and getting, I think I had 3 escapes, and I think all 3 of them were in like 30 seconds or less, something like that. But
it was something to behold. I looked at the transitions, but that head and arm again. So I looked at that and I said, okay, cool. Yeah, that looks like that would be done for, I think, most people. But the pressure was good, and then the back take from it is something that I particularly like to do. So it's like seeing elements of the game that I like to play, but like done well. So when I was looking at it, I go, oh, that's just what I would like to think it would look like if I was doing it. But I will tell you this. I mean, Dova's a friend, but you should know full well that the last time he was on this show, in response to me maybe at a play-by-play commentary gig, getting his name wrong because I didn't have the information, we joke about it, but he's a friend of the show, and I still ended up getting his name wrong because I didn't have paper that said who the competitors were, and it changed on me. And my co-commentator was like, oh, this guy's Matthew. And I go, okay, well, Matthew here. And then I commentate a match. He makes it to the next match, and I go, that's not Matthew, that's Dova, dog. God damn it. Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
So it's out. It's happening live, and our mutual friends are roasting me. And I sent him a note. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. And he just goes, dude, I thought it was funny. And I go, great. So next time he comes on the air, I'm like, hey, a very rare public apology from me. Normally I wouldn't give a shit, but you're a pal, so here we go. And by the end of the interview, because I'm being so nice to him, he's like trying to provoke me to be my normal roasting kind of self. And he just goes, hey, Raph, I just want you to know we need to roll again. And the next time we roll, I'm going to beat you up so bad that you're going to quit jiu-jitsu. And I was like, I looked at him and I just go,
like, holy shit, man.
Well, no, I just told him, I'm like, you and all $140 of you are going to make me quit jiu-jitsu? Like, bro, I've been threatened by better. And quite frankly, now I know the person to call if he is trying to come after me. So I think if anything, I just looked at this and I was like, this kid, I think I found part of his kryptonite. So I may keep you in my back pocket for a job in the future.
All right. I don't know what my commission is. I'll have to figure something out.
I mean, it won't be much because it's jiu-jitsu and we don't make much money in the sport. But you know what? It'll be probably more than a private. So that's maybe we can look into it, but we could talk about
Not a
that
bad
later.
deal. Yeah.
I just know that you can tell that after that happens, I have this moment, and now I'm like pot committed and invested in you because I'm like, well, let's see how he goes. I want to see what kind of day you're gonna have, because as you mentioned, you're exhausted, but if you're an audience member who really appreciates jiu-jitsu, you have to look at a performance like that and say like, all right, this dude is meriting our respect. So where is he going to go? What's his day going to look like? And it was still really freaking good, man. So what was it like afterwards? You mentioned just a little bit of burnout, but you get a little bit of rest time. That's the beautiful part, that if it was going to happen at any time, at least you get a little bit of a breather in between that and that next match.
Yeah, well, and because I'm match number 8, I get the shortest rest time of any competitors between the first and second round. This is the second time I've done combat jiu-jitsu 3 times. 2 of those 3 times I was at match number 8. The first time was my next match was Elias Anderson, the eventual champion, and there was 3 submissions between our matches, and I got a total of like 20 minutes of rest time. And I was like, I have to go out again. You know, I just had like a 14-minute match or something, and I wasn't able to get my energy back. This time there were some longer matches, and I was able to kind of get my gas back. I went outside. Keep in mind, this is around Cancun in July. It's starting to get late, but it's about 85 degrees out, super humid in an open air venue. So I'm sweating just sitting there, and I just got done kind of doing a pretty significant water cut. And I rehydrated the best I can, but now I'm sweating hard and competing, and like, okay, time to recover. So I'm sipping water. I said earlier that my wife came out there with me for this one. She's getting me ice to put on my neck, rubbing my forearms out. I'm stretching those out and everything. I actually did feel really pretty recovered and ready to go by the time my next match rolled around. I think due in part to Austin Daffron, who is my friend and who I competed against later. He had a crazy match with Manny Vasquez, who is the 10 Planets #1 guy, where the regulation was great. There was a few times I thought I was going to have to walk on the mat, but then they end up going a full 3 overtimes, and Daffron subs him in the third, which was really cool for Daffron, and also really cool for me that he gave me an extra 10 minutes or so to recover.
One of the few times he has done something kind for others. Again, another friend of the show. We have many friends. So, yeah. And again, I mean, I'm looking at that. Things go well. You know, obviously you get that little bit of time. What then is kind of going through your head as you do that next match? Like, are you enjoying yourself? Are you able at all to process what's happening? Because, you know, after the fact, you were able to say like, yeah, that was kind of a cool experience. But in the moment, it's hard to maybe see that perspective and maybe to understand where even somebody like me who's watching from my house is going, yo, this is dope. I want to watch more of this.
So I think in the past, because I'm going to keep referencing my first 2 experiences because they're very different than this one, like contrasting them to how it played out. I think in each of those first 2, I made a really big deal in my own head about beating that first opponent. I really didn't want to go in and then just lose and feel like I didn't deserve my spot and didn't deserve to be there. And the first time, it was my very first time ever competing on combat jiu-jitsu, and it was a big deal. And the second time, my initial opponent was Diego Lopez, who was a terrifying person to have a combat jiu-jitsu match against. And I really didn't want to just get my head bashed in front of everybody and then get sent home. So this one, I felt like, okay, I feel like I've shown that I belong to be here. I belong in this tournament, and I wanted to win or lose, like have some fun, have some good moments. Like you remember in my first match, probably, I get mount and I'm grinding and I'm starting to get that head and arm choke, and I look over and I see the camera and I give like a very casual smile and a peace sign. And I even, you can see in the background of that clip, you can see Eddie Bravo cracking up. I wanted to like clown and have some fun. So I think I was able to do that. And then I got done. I'm like, wow, I tried not to focus on how good of a match that was, just knowing that, well, shoot, now I have Siraj, who last time I saw him, he was in the semifinals I've seen him winning tournaments since then. He's got a really like tough style for combat jiu-jitsu. Just like a hard-nosed dude who won't get put on bottom position and will slap you in the leg if he can't reach your face. And I just knew I was like in for another hard match, and I didn't have a lot of time to like pat myself on the back for that first match. Although I was like kind of silently.
I mean, listen, dude, the memes that you've been putting up from this have been phenomenal. Like 10 out of 10, no notes. Like I looked at them, and as a meme maker, you know, it's the stuff that you outsourced it to some friends, I'm sure. And some of the stuff that they came up with was beautiful and very, very funny. But it's the stuff that you hope competitors get to have a few moments, because listen, dude, it's business, and yeah, there's 10 weeks of work to get to there, and often years before that help you get to those moments. But I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, you won't have all these opportunities forever, so why not try to enjoy part of it when you can? So those little things that you've been able to put up not only bring a smile on my face just from the reality of seeing like them taking you on like the Titanic or in a bedroom or anything, that I'm just like, that's so stupid, but it's really funny and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But also just from the element of, oh, good, he's at least present enough to kind of see that people will probably respond well to this. So obviously that was good. Talk to me about like how the day ends on this, because for you, you know, you don't quite get the result that you wanted, but you still make a pretty good statement all around. So as a whole, where do you feel on like your last couple experiences for your matches, and what is the like takeaway once you're kind of like done and you have a moment?
Well, there's a few things on both sides. I spent some good time celebrating making a deep run. You know, obviously the ultimate goal is to win the tournament, but it's hard to really believe that that is within reach until you get close. And I feel like now I've got close enough that I went from really happy with my performance to I'm still happy with my performance, still a lot of good wins, but feel like, you know, I could have done things differently and approached that last match differently to put myself in better positions, instead of getting caught behind and then just like scrambling, trying to get to a better position, not getting it and getting strangled. Feels like, you know, now I believe I can. It's easier to believe I can go win that whole thing or win other big things or win other big tournaments that are going to be important or beat other people who seem intimidating. Gives me a lot more self-belief. But there is that level of frustration that creeps into thinking, man, this is a different conversation if I win the whole thing. You know, if I win that one last match, things change for me in a much bigger way. I think it did. You know, I got some kind words from like the guys who put on that tournament. Namely, Eddie Bravo said some nice things to me, which, you know, I remember 10 plus years ago trying to figure out rubber guard out of an Eddie Bravo book, and it's like, man, kind of come full circle. To then doing rubber guard against one of his 10th planets in front of one of his 10th planet black belts in front of him. Yeah, I think the takeaway is just like more belief in myself, more self-confidence, which I was actually, believe it or not, I spent that whole tournament struggling to convince myself I could win a single match, and then it just kept happening, you know. So just trying to get the nagging voice out of my head telling me, like, you know, these other guys, they're full-time, they're not elementary school teachers, they're full-time jiu-jitsu guys, and it's going to be tough to stack this up. Yeah,
It's a tough thing, dude. There is no real way to prep for that sort of way when that competition self-talk hits you. Like, because you can prep for it, you could say like, all right, I'm going to be real mentally strong and I'm going to be prepared, I'm going to be there, and then it hits you and you go, oh, hello, voice in my head, all right, shut up right now, I don't need you. And then, you're your own companion, you're going through it, you're hearing this voice because it's the same voice that motivated you to get there is now being a little bit of a traitor and kind of giving you some pause. But the nice part is you did get the evidence that you very much belong in that conversation. And if you're getting these notes from a person who, was the namesake of it and a whole system, you get this sense like, okay, he's paying attention. He's seen talent before. So it's not just a mistake at this point. Like, you very much do belong in that conversation. And children, just so you know how long this man has been training, he learned techniques from a book. That's how long he's been doing jiu-jitsu. And I have to tell you, it's the same book I had to read too. And I looked at some of those moves even then, and I was like, this isn't going to happen. Like, this rubber guard thing is not going to happen for me, but it's good to know, and it's good to understand the concepts. So I think you can take heed in that, and knowing that I won't be surprised when you get a call back for the next one. And obviously new opportunities are going to come as a result of that stage and that sign. What I would like to ask, though, is where does jiu-jitsu find its way in your journey? Normally, when people appear on the first time on our show, we like to get to know them, how jiu-jitsu started for them, and if jiu-jitsu was maybe the first thing that you were doing in your athletic career.
Yeah, so I count my official start of doing jiu-jitsu would be, what's that? Like early, like March of 2013. I'll preface that before that, I was trying to learn jiu-jitsu, but there was just simply no jiu-jitsu. I come from a small town, Chewelah, Washington, which was like 2,000 people population. It's an hour drive from Spokane, which is like the city. No jiu-jitsu here. Mostly just kind of old people waiting to die in Chewelah, and then a few kids in a small school. But I saw UFC and I saw like Frank Mir ripping people's arms off, and I just was like, I have to learn that. And I would try to YouTube like how to do a Kimura, and then like grab my friend's arm on the carpet, and then we'd wrestle on the trampoline and try to like choke each other out and stuff. And we'd call it playing tap out because all we knew was it was the grappling part of UFC, and I thought that was really cool. And I'd like jump on my friends' backs and choke them in high school, but I'd never really trained jiu-jitsu. I just thought UFC was cool, and I learned some of the moves. I was like, this is awesome. I joined a club ran by a blue belt in college, March of 2013. And he was like a little smaller than me, and it was in the gi, but I'd also like taken a college judo class. So I was like the most annoying white belt, just full of piss and vinegar, trying to beat up this blue belt like smaller than me. Anyway, that was in March. He graduated. He was a senior, and I was one of the only people who was consistent. So he's like, do you want to run this club, white belt, who's been training 3 months? And I was like, yeah, that'd be sick. So me and I had a friend who was a college wrestler and was doing jiu-jitsu, was similarly full of piss and vinegar, amateur MMA fighter, and we just beat each other's throats. One other amateur MMA fighter. It was the least friendly club to a new person because it was just us kind of like beating each other up, and then someone else would show up and we'd be like, you get beat up too. And then some people would stay and some people wouldn't. Mostly people would stay for short periods of time. But that club, and then I was obviously a white belt, a little insecure about my own ability. So the new person comes, I'm like, I can't lose. I'm the president. I put the pressure on myself. I'm like, I'm never allowed to lose as a white belt. I started doing this club at a nearby college, like 15 minutes away, ran by a purple belt. And I would like learn techniques there and bring them back to my tiny club, and we'd try to workshop them, and end up just thrashing each other. My college wrestler friend, Brandon Todd, who is now a doctor of physical therapy, by the way, and was a 6-2 pro MMA fighter, and he's doing stand-up comedy now. He's the man, the missing link on Instagram.
Hold on. This is, how many different careers does this man have? You can't
Dude,
have all of those things.
He's an absolute character. So yeah, he's a brown belt right now, 6-2 MMA fighter. His first pro fight was an 8-man tournament. An 8-man MMA tournament. He won the whole tournament for his first pro fight. All the other 7 guys were established pros. Doctorate of physical therapy, and now has almost stopped doing jiu-jitsu because he fell in love with stand-up comedy. And even though he's like sober and doesn't drink, he's hanging out in bars 4 nights a week to just like tell jokes to nobody.
Listen, dude, I understand the comedy and the jiu-jitsu stuff fairly well. You know, I used to tell people who did stand-up comedy, because I do comedy, I work in entertainment, I would have an open invite to them so that I would bring them to me and I would be like, I want to know exactly how many of you comics have black belts, because I may not be the funniest, but I better be the best at jiu-jitsu. So it has to be a trade-off. I'm either funnier than you or I have better jiu-jitsu than you, and you cannot have both. So you're telling me this dude was like, hey man, I'm a goon, but I did fight. I did pretty well. I'm going to see this jiu-jitsu thing through. You know what? Comedy. Like, this detour literally is coming all around on all the different
Oh, and
fronts.
while being a doctor of physical therapy. So while he's like working a crazy schedule and being this professional guy, and then he's going out to bars to like the middle of the night to then wake up and early to treat patients all day.
What's the deal with kneecaps? Am I right? God,
Yeah,
mobility sucks.
He's a guy actually though. If you talk to him, I think you would think he's hilarious. So if you want, I can give you his contact or something like that.
We'll be in touch. The problem is because he already fights and is better at jiu-jitsu, I don't want the
Can't give
crushing
him a
knowledge
platform.
that he's gonna be better at me than doing jokes too. Because then at that point, I'm just gonna hang this thing up. But please go on.
Understandable. Anyway, so he's one of the guys, and he actually, we're both kinesiology majors in college, which is like movement science, right? And the last semester is go into any movement setting and work there like 30, 40 hours a week. And then you have to have some cumulative project, and you have to like pitch the college your idea, right? So you could work with a swim team, or you could work with a college team, or you could work with youth sports or whatever. But I was like, what if I could do jiu-jitsu and get college credits for it? So I hit up a couple of gyms. I had done a tournament at Warrior Camp as a white belt. It was just like 10 years ago, a week ago, that I had done that tournament. I just came across the picture. But I was like, hey, can we work for you for free for about a semester? And they were like, that sounds like a great deal. And so they said, yeah. And I said, hey, can my buddy come along too? We both got a spot in Spokane, which is like between where I grew up and where I went to college. It's like the city right in there. And we would just wake up. We would train at 11 a.m., clean the mats after that. We would bring the gis home and wash them. The gym put on fights once a month, and we would help set up and tear down the cage for a bunch of hours. We would throw up advertisements. And then at the end, we did a jiu-jitsu tournament. We put on a little one out of the gym, and that was like our cumulative project. But really, that whole semester, we just kind of fucked off and drank and trained and had a great time and got college credits for it. It was amazing. We were like, I can't believe this is actually real. I feel like they're going to catch us, you know?
I mean, when I was in college and doing grad work, I got to a point where the UFC was just starting to take off. And I remembered very distinctly looking at people being like, I am going to write about the UFC. And they go, okay. And I go, yeah, I'm going to do studies on the business principles of the UFC. And they're like, okay. And I go, there's mergers and acquisitions. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. All right, bye, everybody. And they're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to go read about it. Nope, 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 nope. And as people were seeing me doing that, they're like, I'm a little mad at you. And I go, you're all doing it. Everybody here is picking their thing. Let me have my thing. My thing just happens to be more entertaining than your thing.
It's like, but we don't like your thing.
Yeah, I was like, your thing sucks. I get it. My thing's pretty cool. That is amazing. And I want to say this. There is a little bit of an overlap between me and you in this regard, which is I obviously live in California now, but I was given a scholarship to compete for speech and debate. So I lived in Illinois and in Kentucky for undergrad and grad. And the consistent part of that for me in both those regions was that I was starting to watch more UFC. Obviously, my studies were starting to be tailored to that. And I was like, oh, I should train. Like, I never imagined I would be that guy. But then I started to see the science of the grappling part. And I go, oh, I've always been durable when I mess around with my buddies. So I kind of understand some science of it. I bet I can make like the chess version of it. Yeah, I can see it. And literally as I was looking for a place, they're like, we don't have one around here. It's pretty far. I go, all right. So I'm about to leave, go to grad school. They go, hey, that place just opened like right down the street from where you lived. I go, great. So I moved to Kentucky. I'm like, all right, let me go start training now. No place? Nothing? Soon as I leave. Hey, Raf, we just opened up a spot right down the street. I was like, you guys really, this is annoying? And
Mm-hmm.
now I know people who I have interviewed over the years who live in those regions. And I'm like, I want to vent for 10 minutes just to let you know that I'm really pissed. You guys exist now. Where were
Yeah.
you guys when I could have been better back then? So yeah, this whole region of like, man, the jiu-jitsu wasn't there, but the want was there. So clearly things have worked well for you. Here's the question though. When do you actually start to fall in love with jiu-jitsu? Because it is not easy to have a full-time gig, especially working in a school program, which can be very unforgiving on your body and your spirit for a long period of time. And working with kids means you have a certain kind of patience level. So all those things given, where do you find this love for jiu-jitsu? When does this hit you that you kind of say like, yeah, this is something I want to pursue as more than just a hobby?
Man, well, I never thought I could pursue it as more than just a hobby. Um, for the longest time, I loved it right away. Like I said, before I even knew what it was, I was just finding excuses to like wrestle with submission rules, and I didn't know what that was even called, but I knew I really loved doing that, and I thought it was like really fun, and I thought it was like the cool way to do it. So when I found out that was called jujitsu, I did everything I could to get to a jujitsu gym to get better at this. And originally I had thought about like fighting MMA, and I kind of just ended up sticking to jujitsu. I I did it. I did jujitsu for fun through college, and then when it came time to move, my wife and I wanted to move somewhere warm, and first thing I did was find a really good jujitsu gym where we were going to move, and I was excited to go like train at a big like world class feeling gym, which was Drysdale's in Las Vegas, which is an excellent spot, and that helped me like see the next level of jujitsu. And I kind of always felt like, it's not I can't do that because I can't travel around and compete on every IBJJF card to get good enough at competing and tactical enough under those rules to like really be even a world level like purple belt. The guys who are winning worlds at purple belt have a lot of competitions and get a lot of time, and I didn't have like the funds or any sort of sponsorships to be able to do that, so I'm still just training for fun, competing when I can. After I moved back to Washington, it was like during COVID, my wife and I had just had our oldest daughter. We're back around family and everything, and I'm back to living in Spokane. We bought a house here, and we're like training in the back room. This was when Pablo was getting ready for combat jiu-jitsu and had to pull out. And he starts talking to me about getting his spot and getting me on, trying to get me on Submission Underground and these other shows. Until then, I didn't even realize that could potentially be an option. But once he was kind of made that a reality for me, helped me get on combat jiu-jitsu, right away I started treating it. I started really respecting that process. At the time, I was just substitute teaching, and I basically stopped subbing and just started really preparing for that one. So at that time is when I think I started treating it like more than just a hobby, like something I wanted to act like a professional at. But before that, I was just training really hard as a hobby because that's what I love to do anyway.
That is very cool to hear. I have to ask because it's in the name, but I don't know why. I can make guesses, but how does one get the middle name or moniker Cougar? Because to my knowledge, you're not like a cougar like John Cougar Mellencamp. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. I'm assuming it's based on movement, but I'd like to know, how do you get that and who do you get that from?
So it's really like not even as cool as all that. Really what it was is I think my original Instagram handle was Super Cougar Zack. We had a teacher in high school that would do the Super Cougar. What our high school mascot was Cougar, and at the time that I made Instagram, I was in college, and I went to WCU, the Cougs. So it was like Coug in high school, Coug in college, just Super Cougar, just staying on that thing. But then I don't know. People saw that on Instagram. Like once I started to get people paying any attention to me from jiu-jitsu, which was not that many people, but then I saw people like getting ready for a match or whatever, like the Super Cougar is getting ready for. I'm like, oh, they think that's my nickname. Uh, so I dropped the Super because that was obnoxious. I just did Cougar Schneider, and it does kind of. I don't know. I got a little bit of pop, a little bit of pounce here and there, and if you're going to be an animal, that's kind of a cool one, I guess. I don't know, but it was just already there, so I left it, and that's it.
I'll be honest with you, that is a more detailed answer than PJ Barch has ever given me for Butter Panther. And
I should have kept it vague too. I should have kept it like, oh, that's just who I am.
No, that's not good either, because he just happens to be so good he can get away with pretending like it doesn't matter. But my job is to keep him accountable. So he's always doing this like in his vague surfer Matthew McConaughey version of what he does. When I'm like, what does it mean? He's just like, hey man, you gotta see. And I go, that's not an answer. It actually makes it worse. And he's like, you'll know it when you experience it. And I go, I don't want to experience. I just want to know. It's a question. You should have a better answer prepared. There's no air of mystery. It's just a logical, what does it mean? And it doesn't help when other people are like, ooh, Butter Panther. Yeah, you'll know once you see it. I go, you are all taking.
You're all buying into this? You're
all drinking this Kool-Aid. I get that he's good. It's not that he's not good. So I
kind of love it, though. I kind of love the just like, dude, it's just a feeling. It's just a vibe. I don't have to explain it. It's hilarious.
I see. It's a vibe. God, Jesus Christ. I want you to record that. And anytime you think that the next generation is full of nonsense, I need you to just listen to yourself saying that.
Oh, so I already, like I said, I work with little kids, right? Like kindergarten through 6th grade. I spend half my time of my work day, 50% of my work week is with 6th graders. So they're full of like the new jargon and thinking it's hilarious. And I love just copying their jargon and like selling it back to them. And they hate it. And I'm the oldest, like lamest person when I do it, according to them. It's the best.
What is the most recent thing that you have incorporated into your language or your regular lexicon that you have taken from the children?
Okay, I'll give you the backstory on this one. So one of the kids, some of the audience is gonna like hear it as soon as I say it, and some of it I'll have to explain it. But one of the kids raises their hand. We're like, I'm coaching track after school, right? And we're all like stretching. And one of my kids, who's also one of my wrestlers, we'll call him Q, was like, Mr. Schneider, what's zesty mean? And I was like, I don't know, it's kind of like spicy, but also like tang. I don't know, something like that. He's like, okay. You could tell he like didn't feel like that answered his question. And then the next day, it was either later that practice or the next day, he goes, Mr. Schneider, you lied to me. And I was like, what? He goes, you told me zesty means spicy, and it means gay. I was like, what? That's news to me. But so that's how I found out. And I don't like, not one I can like throw back on the kids for obvious reasons. Got to be a professional and whatnot. Right. But you know, you got to incorporate what the kids say here and there.
I think it brings new meaning to a certain soap. So good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Anytime this happens now, I feel like I have some ear to the ground, but that I keep getting further removed. So I will knowingly say certain things in a deadpan way. And sometimes if they're picking up on it, they will say the following, which is, are you mocking us? And I go, what else do you think I'm supposed to do? Do you think I'm supposed to say it for real as I am getting continuously older? Like, no, your language is dumb. Accept that it's dumb. My language was dumb. The previous language was dumb. You just have to recognize the dumb parts of it.
Just hear it coming out of my mouth and recognize how dumb it sounds.
Exactly. And please understand, if you don't hear how dumb it is when I'm saying it, it's not that, it just suddenly became dumb.
Yeah.
It was dumb. So I try to bring that knowledge to them. But I feel like one of the first things I had, and I'm sure your generation goes up, because we're removed enough. Like seeing a movie like Superbad hit and do exactly what I was doing when they're like, hey, you know, everybody was adding Z's to the end of things, like fun Z's, they're the same Z's, and all those. I was like, I fucking hate that. That shit's
Yeah.
fucking dumb. And then a week later, I was like, well, same Z's. And they're like, well, I don't like the way you say it. I was like, good, because it's going to start like getting real bad for you to say it. I promise you.
Right.
And all of a sudden you see them doing it in like Superbad and even doing like a boop. And I go, this is what it is, kids. That's why it's funny. That's why that movie lives on in infamy, because it's so good. All right, man, we're going to start circling over here. And I wanted to bring this up because you told me off air, you let me know that you got a match with Elias. So this seems like a really awesome opportunity because he's always good to watch. Him and his brother, both friends of the show. You coming off a really good performance over at Combat Jiu-Jitsu. That's got to be fire. Tell me a little bit about when that's happening.
I'm pretty pumped on it. It's happening September 30th, and it's happening in my hometown of Spokane in an it's just outdoors at like this beautiful spot at the park. They're having a whole day of tournaments the day before for everybody, and then they're having a day of like super fights. So I'm excited about it because it's in a common area in Spokane where non-jiu-jitsu fans are going to be coming by, see a commotion, and be checking it out. It's going to expose a bunch more people, and it's one of the first times we really have talent like this come into Spokane. Like Mason Fowler in a headliner match, Amanda Lowen has a big match, Juliana Miller is on the card, myself versus Elias Anderson. And it just feels like a big match for me because I feel like I've been on a bit of a roll here. And now is a chance to have a big match in my hometown, finally, like in front of my family and friends who can't travel to Mexico to see Combat Jiu-Jitsu. You know, they get to like just go to the park and cheer me on. So I'm pretty pumped on that. A lot of respect for Elias. He's an absolute stud, but I think it would also be meaningful for me to people within Combat Jiu-Jitsu as well as anybody else. I think a win over Elias would be one of my favorite like marquee wins in my jiu-jitsu career thus far. I also think I do my best work in those single matches, so it's just kind of the type of athlete I tend to be. So I'm excited to get him a first match. It's also a rematch after I had a brutal match with Austin Daffron, my very first Combat Jiu-Jitsu match, and he kind of beat the snot out of me, and I won in overtime and made it to the next round, and I got rewarded with Elias. He got me, and this match is 15 pounds heavier. It's a lot more comfortable weight for both of us. It's a jiu-jitsu rule set, not a combat rule set, which I think both of us also kind of would prefer, you know, just more jiu-jitsu guys than pure combat or MMA. It's going to be outdoors. It's going to be sick. So if you're anywhere in the Spokane area, keep an eye out for Spokane Submission Challenge. I'm sure it'll be streamed as well if you want to search for that, because it's not like a huge show, but it is going to have some cool names. And it's going to have some cool performances. So just keep a lookout for that, everybody. I'm also looking to make a run at some of these ADCC Opens coming up. So probably catch me around some of those.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, man, because I think I always try to tell people and acknowledge when I think they've done something great so that they can keep that momentum going, because you know, sometimes competing is like being in a void. You don't know what's happening. You know that something went right a couple times. You know that something feels right. But just based off of what we were able to see in this last performance, I felt like it was another step. So, you know, hearing the prep, hearing all of that makes sense as to what may have been difference makers that made you stand out even more in my head. So when I see those moments, I go, no. Let's mark this right now. Let's mark where we were, because I do see a nice trajectory for you going forward. And again, matches with Elias, it's like, you think about it like this, having a dance partner that you know will bring good matches has to feel great, because we're in a sport that sometimes our most competitive matchups kind of boring. And both of these guys do what they need to do. I don't really see a very boring scenario for you guys. I feel like it'll be a very fun and competitive match. So I'm very excited for that. And let's do this. We're going to put a pin in our conversation now. I'm sure there will be further conversations to be had, but I would love to give you an opportunity to shout out anybody that you wanted to acknowledge who helped you with this most recent performance, or any sponsors that you potentially want to give a shout out to because they've been helpful in your journey, sir?
So people who have helped me, Coach Pablo Alfonso, MMA OG, owner of Warrior Camp, so good to his athletes and helping us prepare and getting our mind right. He's the man, and super grateful to him as well as Warrior Camp for, letting me like spend a whole lot of time in their facilities and not asking for a dime and not asking me for even a kickback when I sell privates out of there. They've made everything very, very easy. Big thanks to them. Big thanks to Drysdale's, where I got my brown and my black belt, and really they showed me what that next level looks like and how I should be training and preparing. So that was massive from them. Dr. Dylan, DL Training Systems, if you want to follow him online, see some of the stuff he's putting out. Helped me get my body ready. And I wore some really cool Stallion performance shorts. I'm wearing their tank top right now. I was wearing their hat right before the interview. They actually, one of my former personal trainers, who's the man, he's a tank, Craig the Stallion Feistner. He's putting out really cool performance gear. And I think they are just about to go on sale. Like the website's getting loaded up. They're getting everything ready. So if anybody wants to check out some of their stuff, it's really nice. It's like high quality. And I'll probably have a discount code for you, like on my Instagram here soon. So check out my Instagram if you want to see that. Zack Cougar Schneider is that.
Let's have a word here for a second. You said you were wearing that hat before you came on the show for us here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just had it on like walking around the house because I love this hat.
Okay. Let me just say something to most people with hat hair. The hair doesn't do what it's doing for you. Most people with hat hair just flattens out. You're literally getting like, oh, sorry, this, oh God. I'm looking at you and I'm like, I didn't even know you had a fucking hat on. If I have a hat on, dude, this thing goes sideways and I look like I got like an Arsenio Hall like 1990s haircut going on mine.
Yeah, I got a little pomade and it'll reshape for me. It works out well. Thank you.
Well, let's do this, sir. We will say a cordial goodbye right now. I'm going to go ahead and close this in just a second. So I'll say bye to you off air. But again, big credit to you. Thank you so much for giving us a great performance and give us something really, really fun to watch. I look forward to what's next for you, sir. And I very much appreciate you sharing your story with us, man.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Awesome, man. I'll see you in just a second off air. But in the meantime, to you guys, my friends, the people who watch this show, I just want to say this real quick to you guys. Thank you so much for watching another installment of Grappling Hour. Do me a solid. Don't forget to go to HY.PAGE/Grappling Hour. Become a member. $5. Get to see these interviews 30 days before anybody else. And then become a premium member if you want to see some extra special cool shit. Content only available there. And additionally, if you want to join our Discord, you're more than welcome to. You'll see previews of things that nobody else gets to see, engage in conversation. I'm in there asking a question every single day. Weekday, let's be real. I try to take the weekends off. And I'm happy to create a nice little foster community of good-spirited discussion for jiu-jitsu. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. It has been a blast talking with you. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. It's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats. Perfect.